Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the Community Sync number 20, I guess, according to my monotonic counter. Today we don't have a lot of topics. One thing I wanted to share with everyone, also in the public sync, is how we manage to synchronize or to have an overview about the activities that we have in the context of the container runtime interface and the implementation in Rocket. And I gathered together a few links, which I would like to share with you. So just let me share my screen. Hopefully you can see the document.
Yep.
Okay. And somebody again threw me out. Can you still see my screen?
Yeah, you're still coming through fine.
Okay, great. Somebody's kicking me out all the time. Okay, so as you know, we are working on the container runtime interface implementation in Rocket. And since this is a pretty big issue, it's not a small task that one has to implement with just one pull request. We have many things to resolve. We have architectural decisions to make. So it's kind of it kind of makes sense to make this a little bit more structured. So the life around the container runtime interface in Rocket began with this umbrella issue, which has a catchy phrase, container runtime interface integration. And I'm still actively maintaining this umbrella issue. It is, I don't know, you could say it's something like the landing page for the CRI integration inside Rocket. I added the relevant issues from Kubernetes, from upstream, which might be interesting for somebody who wants to contribute. Most importantly, the CRI upstream proposal. I don't know, like GitHub has some issues right now from here. The client server proposal, the actual tracker issue, and so on. Furthermore, we have a couple of references which we constantly oh, I have a unicorn.
I get that the first I load that each day. So
okay.
Load that today is what the unicorn means. Next time you refresh, it loads.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, it's not so important. I mean, the most important bit here is to say that we have an umbrella issue regarding the CRI, that we are gathering all interesting links from upstream here. And if you have anything that you will think that is worth adding here, don't hesitate just to, if you have permissions, of course, just edit the command. Again, we are using this like wiki style. Also, we have a couple of references here, the API protobuf declaration from the CRI and upstream, which we regularly consult, which is one of our main driving forces on how to implement things in Rocket and how to question things actually. Then, of course, we have the proposal documentation, and so on, so on, and so on. Down here, we have a couple of high-level bullet points of the things that we would like to have implemented inside Rocket. More concretely, the new subcommands under the Rocket app umbrella, which we demoed already a couple of times. So the most prominent one, the sandbox, and all the other subcommands that go along with it. And also other bigger subtasks which have to be implemented. Another thing that we did is we used a brand new feature from GitHub called the GitHub project. This is a Kanban style overview of what we are doing right now. We don't follow this very strictly in the sense that we do a daily stand-up and shift around those cards. Mainly, I am maintaining this thing here to have a high-level overview of what we are actually doing, what the next to-do is. Again, if you like to work on CRI, don't hesitate to help me actively maintaining this overview. The way I usually do it is I add cards here whenever we have issues open with the label area CRI. Currently, you see I have no results because all the issues that have this label set are already present on this board. So whenever you create an issue with the area CRI label, don't hesitate also to update this projects overview and add those issues, at least in the backlog. And if they are assigned and you think that somebody can already start working, don't hesitate to put it on the to-do list. Again, this is because this CRI implementation is a bigger thing. It just helps us to structure things. So,
Yogesh, how many of the backlog are not workable because we're waiting on other things?
Quite some. So, for instance, this semantic mismatch CRI and Rocket, this is currently being discussed upstream, as you see here, filed an upstream issue. And my idea with this column was, it is a backlog of issues that could be done, don't necessarily have to be done. If we have issues of which we are of the opinion that they definitely can be tackled in the context of a concrete implementation inside Rocket, just pull it over to do, and then somebody can grab it.
Okay, gotcha.
Right. So the backlog is just, the typical backlog thing. But this thing here, the capabilities that we discussed in the SIG note last week, where we want to have, a same default of a capability set upstream and there. This is nothing to implement right now here, so it just stays there in the backlog. Does it answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, so yeah, again, don't hesitate to help me a little bit in maintaining this thing, and add new issues. So the biggest thing that we are working right now, as you see, is the Linux stuff, which we are also currently clarifying upstream. So it's sort of in progress. We don't yet really know if we have to implement something in Rocket itself, but there is a bit of discussion going on upstream. So I thought to myself, it's worth putting it in progress. The other thing that's currently, Luca is sitting on it because he has a security context. Also, the other thing that he's currently implementing is the whole attach feature. He has a sample prototype already going on for attaching TTYs. As you see, this is a long beard of discussions, which are also currently ongoing. Casey, I think you have the volume stuff more or less done.
That's right. Yep, just tying together the command line parameters, which is more work than I expected.
Okay, yeah, that's always the case. Yeah, so this seems like already a low-hanging fruit. Attaching volumes to applications inside a sandbox was kind of blocked by systemd upstream, and there was a pull request being merged literally this weekend, probably a consequence of the systemd conference that happened last week. And we have some feature that was merged into systemd, which changed the mount propagation modes, which now allow us to add a volume to a running container. So this was kind of a blocker. Since this is merged, we can adapt the stage one and add the missing pieces in Rocket itself. I'm currently sitting between those two chairs, expose relative CPU shares, which I started implementing, had an out-of-band discussion with Jonathan. So Yifan, if you could have a look at this, that would be great, because there's some insights in it where we think that the upstream CRI interface could be simplified. The other thing is, this is the synchronize app and remove operations, which I think Yuan had a look at currently, which he liked. This issue was essentially to make sure that any mutable operations you do once a sandbox was started, that these things are properly synchronized behind a POSIX file log, essentially.
Yeah, and I think that wasn't just a theoretical problem. I think that I actually was running into that a good bit.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, but it was on my plate anyway, so if it looks good to you, I still would like to have at least another looks good to me from another Rocket maintainer, and then we can immediately merge it. Okay, so this is the GitHub project stuff. What we also have is we have a dedicated branch in Rocket. This is probably obvious to everybody working on the CRI internally, but maybe not so much for, I don't know, any other outside people. So we have a CRI branch which tracks all the development against CRI, and only at certain checkpoints we merge back into master. So all those subcommands that we know, the up subcommands, are currently not available in master, and hence are also not available in the current released thing, because this is so much in flux. We are changing the arguments all the time and do not consider this API stable. Also, this is actually an issue that I would like to create tomorrow. We are missing functional tests at all for the up sandbox stuff. So this is something I would also like to start the next days. So we have this branch, and to have at least some feedback for the continuous build, we created a dummy pull request, which always points to the CRI branch. All pull requests against the CRI go into this branch. So hopefully this thing should stay green all the time. And I'm also, like, on average, every second day, I'm merging back master into this branch. So we are in sync with our master with a delay of, again, on average, 2 days. So we don't lose track of the developments that happened there. So what else is interesting here? Of course, we also have a completely separate project, the Rocketlet project, where Yifan and Yuan are working on. This is the actual glue code towards Kubernetes, which implements the actual container runtime interface and currently shells out to the app subcommands. I don't remember where it was. I think it was somewhere here. Yuan, I don't know. Was it here? Somewhere? Pod sandbox?
The CLI abstraction.
Yeah, exactly. Somewhere in here, we are creating the actual run commands to the app subcommands of Rocket. And as far as my understanding goes, this code will be re-rendered into upstream Kubernetes.
That's correct, yep.
If you have anything more to add, Ewan, for a clarification that would make sense in this public video, don't hesitate to come up with it. So this is the overview that I wanted to give around Rocket. In the context of CRI, you see we have a couple of things: branch, a dangling pull request, a small GitHub project overview, which helps us to keep a sane overview of what we are actually doing. So if you want to take over, Yuan, and say something about the Rocketlet, don't hesitate.
I'm going to link over to the SIG Kubernetes meeting notes, because we had a pretty in-depth discussion about what areas still need more clarification and what areas need some work, and also some of the other gaps we have there. I'll also call out a couple of those because I think it's important to keep some of them in mind. So SIG Kubernetes meeting notes, I don't know if you can actually link to a certain section of a GitHub, of a Google Doc. And if I can't, then this is, oh no, it looks like you can. Okay, there's a link I was looking for. Cool. So no, never mind. That doesn't link to an anchor. So I'll just put the text that is the 10:04 meeting, and the 9:27 meeting also had a list of things that we were looking at. So a couple things that I'm going to call out is, right now during development you run the Rocketlet as a separate binary, even though it'll be re-rendered in for actual people to use. So if you're trying to develop, the easy way to do that right now is you build the Rocketlet, you run that binary, and it listens on a Unix socket. And then if you look at the Kubernetes local up cluster command, it has a few environment variables that were recently added to let it use a remote runtime, that's called, and you can just point it at that Unix socket and it'll connect and work for the most part. things that don't work are the things we know about, like attach and logging and volume mounts and so on. But for the most part, things do work there, and it's very helpful to be able to do that while making changes there. Two things that we do need to do is get end-to-end testing going on the Rocket repo. And I know that that doesn't as closely relate to Rocket. It would be nice if we could also build CRI branch in as we go with that, but that's not as important as just getting the testing going at all. And to do that, we're likely going to have to bypass some of the things like logging and exec and just make them work until we have a proper implementation. There's one other big unknown that isn't being mentioned very well here, and that is the fate of metrics, specifically cAdvisor's integration right now works through the API service, but this CRI integration is trying to be done without API service as much as possible. If we leave API service running and we make sure to pay attention to cAdvisor and API service appropriately, it should still probably work, but it would be nice if we could also remove API service entirely and still have those metrics work, and that's something that isn't being discussed or scoped out really, so it's quite possible that we'll just push that back and end up having API service running just for cAdvisor.
So the cAdvisor stuff is the only hard dependency left for the Rocket API service, or is there anything more?
That is the only hard dependency I know of.
Okay.
I think we can fix that. It's not actually getting the usage from the API service. It's just getting like information like the secret
discovery,
the pod, and some annotations in the pod.
Yeah, it basically finds where pods are based on C group. So it has a C group and it looks it up through the API service to say this C group maps to this Rocket pod, and then gets a little more metadata about that pod. And that's stuff we can do without it. I just don't think we've scoped that out or talked about that. And the CRI interface itself is punting on doing that. So if we do it, we'll be on our own for the most part for how it actually works.
There's one thing, I'm sorry that I'm coming back away from the document. You just linked another issue that I also found today, which is, in my opinion, very important. That's the tracking of unimplemented fields in CRI. I think this is more or less also something that we are trying to synchronize on. Do you think that we have, for all the bullet points that are listed here, log directory, mounts and container config, privileged, log path, and so on, do we have for each and every bullet point a corresponding Rocket issue, or do you think we are missing something still here? I'm looking at the issues 35.
Yeah, I'm not confident that this actually covers everything, nor that we have mapped things across completely, but I don't have specific things to call out.
Okay.
No, I think the sort of plan, as far as I understood it, was to do a final sort of, as we were coming up on CRI merge, we were going to do a final pass of the PRs and make sure that they made the transition from proof of concept to final implementation.
I think part of doing that is having a mature enough implementation Rocketlet and Kubernetes side that we can also run at least the end-to-end test against it. So I think that's an important validation to do for the Rocket side, is using Kubernetes as a client of that and making everything for the most part works.
Okay. Right. So
does that make sense to you too?
I will try to link issues for everything in this issue.
okay, I think I understand. So we are currently like in a little bit of unknown area, I would say. We're trying to implement as much as we know. And then once we are on the point that we are confident to actually kick the tires with the E2E tests, we will iteratively find out more what the missing bits are. Am I correct with this naive assumption?
That sounds correct. Though there's added difficulty in that there are both bits on the Rocket CRI and Rocketlet side, all of them which are not implemented. So you have 3 layers to also determine where something is missing. And if it's missing at one layer, it might mask something missing at another layer.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically the issue 35 tracks all the like explicit fields in the CRI, in the product definition that is not being implemented. But there are something like implicit, like you have mentioned about the serializer integration with the CRI, those things.
Yeah, there are other semantics and implicit assumptions that aren't present in just the field names. So.
Okay, understood. Yeah, I just don't want to have, at least I want to avoid the situation where there is something that we know that is missing in Rocket, which we don't have a issue generated for. Right? So if you have anything that is kind of obvious that is missing in Rocket, please create immediately an issue with this CRI label, and then I will, I'm scanning those things anyways every morning, so I will take over and assign it to me or to any other one so we can start working on this one. I think the current biggest thingies are the TTY stuff and the SE Linux. I just found yet another thing about the CPU shares today, but I think if Yifan can have a look at this later, we might have this resolved too. Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah, I think the big missing piece is the mountain volumes. Yeah, and the SE Linux, so I don't know if I see you guys, but the Paul from the Red Hat, he has opened an issue discussing about new design of the whole SE Linux thing. So it seems like it's moving towards the pod level SE Linux, which is great.
Yeah, that would be great. That would help us a lot, right? Because we already have the semantics more or less implemented.
I also have some questions about logging, and I know that that's not totally determined on the Kubernetes side.
It seems like it's not determined at all, right? They're like, we'll support logging, but we'll support some formats. Can you clarify that a bit, actually?
Me and Vish, I think, had an understanding of what we thought was going to happen there, and it hasn't actually happened. But my understanding was basically that you have logging volumes, which people keep mixing up with this, where that is just a volume where you can put whatever arbitrary logging formats and some metadata. And that is totally orthogonal to the logging here because that does not require support from the runtime apart from mounting volumes. So we're going to totally ignore the logging volume discussion because while cool and important, that is not related to what we're doing. So the only other type of logging you have to think about is the standard AIR, standard out logging. And the discussion around that, I thought, concluded basically with we need to support the sense fields, the sense flags, so we need timestamps of some form, which you obviously don't get normally, and we need to support arbitrary formats, so we can't mandate that they give us that. So we therefore need some way to store that on disk. And the other things that he wanted was it should be a single format for all container runtimes, so that an external system like Fluentd or whatever can integrate once with Kubernetes and get every runtime for free. And also this on-disk format should be able to be put in a specific location so that it can be block IO counted, probably in a pod directory, somewhere in a C group that Kubernetes can know about it. So those are basically the constraints and the conclusion that we reached in our face-to-face. I thought, me, Phillips, and Vish all seemed to think that this was good enough. I had some concerns with mandating a single format, but Phillips and Vish and I all just said, okay, that's the best we can do probably. So the conclusion was we pick one format which keeps the metadata of standard AIR, standard out, and timestamp, as well as the raw log line that occurred at that timestamp, stores that in some known location, and CRI communicates that location via a log directory. So all that happens is we, as the Rocketlet, have to somehow make all of the logs from your Rocket applications end up in this known directory in a known named format so that anything else can read them. The ways that we thought of for doing that for Rocket itself is, one, we could continue to use systemd and then have another process that consumes the systemd journal or acts as a systemd journal server and converts it to this new format. The downside of that is obviously having a new process. Two, we could have Rocket natively understand writing to that format. That actually seems slightly more promising in light of the attached stuff, because the attached stuff gives us one more entry point to talk to all of those streams of standard out and standard error. Or three, I don't know, some pod level blessed way to do logging that is kind of pluggable in relation to journal D, or writing our own stage one. Hopefully all of that sort of made sense. If I need to clarify anything, let me know. I know I kind of went off on a couple rambling moments.
Okay, so that makes sense. So the directory has so the log directory is the directory, and it is one file per application.
Well, potentially multiple files. It is
one rotated file.
It is a well-known format that contains time and standard error, standard out distinction. It could be two files, one for standard out, standard error, but it has to have those properties. So standard out and standard error can be separated, and timestamps can be determined.
Are you fighting the good fight to make journal D the format?
I think we have to acquiesce on that fight.
Okay.
I also believe it's not ubiquitous enough. I mean,
Sure.
And I actually personally have found journal D to have some performance issues for me, and have never been totally happy with that aspect of it. It's
Sure.
isn't very granular. If you've looked at the journal D rotate flag, it ends up using a system-wide policy on all journal files, which you can hack around, but it's really hard to hack around it correctly.
Gotcha. I mean, so we already run a logging process in the sort of stage one namespace, which is to say journal D.
Yep.
Certainly it wouldn't be particularly weird to either replace that or add another logging process therein that was a small manager or rotation or proxy or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, the two big remaining things to me there are, one, we need to actually just friggin' pick the format Kubernetes side, and I think we're basically there. It keeps getting derailed by people talking about logging volumes when we're talking about this logging as well, which I understand that happens, but it's something that we just need to decide on to make happen. And then, more importantly, the attach work has to kind of relate to this, because when you have a process that is intercepting or acting as your T2I, then that thing captures standard error and standard out. And my understanding was that it was then forwarding it to journal D. So whatever IOTT mux, T2I mux thing we have also needs to be cognizant of what logging setup we're using. So it adds one more kind of weird little variable into just swapping out the logging process. Unless I'm misunderstanding something there.
I don't remember. Luca is, of course, out.
I'm pretty sure that it just ends up forwarding to journal, so it needs to forward to whatever the logging process is in some way.
I guess so, yeah.
And the final weird thing, which is hard to determine the right thing to do, and that is a var log. What do you do with that? Because journal D can accept that, syslog can accept that, raw standard error and standard out not so much.
Okay.
That information should probably be on a Rocket issue, which I guess I can open after this. Or edit into one of the existing ones. I'm pretty sure they're already on the track some of this. Cool.
Okay.
In your opinion, is the how settling is the or settled down is development on the actual CRI interface, the gRPC file that we're working off of?
Logging and exec are still big unknowns. Metrics are going to need to change. So it's semi-stable-ish for some of what it does, but not really. Yesterday we renamed a field. It still isn't considered alpha. It's considered basically pre-alpha. It is actively in flux. There is no intention of compatibility guarantees right now.
Okay, just curious. I mean, that's ultimately the API this sort of standard that we've been developing towards.
Yeah. The hope is for it to be in 1.5 alpha with things able to change, but mostly stable.
Okay, cool.
And that's being released sometime December, I think.
Cool.
Okay, let's go to the next question, I guess. What is the fate of store OCI factoring stuff? Yeah, maybe I can chime in here unless somebody else has to say something about this. Yeah, so unfortunately we didn't have a lot of progress on this one. We are pretty much concentrating on the container runtime interface stuff. And I would say that we should also make this somehow dependent on the expected image format that Kubernetes can wants to understand as of now, right? So currently, my understanding is that Kubernetes wants to have Docker in the first place, the Docker image format. So as long as this is the same default, let's say for 1.5, I don't know, we should keep on prioritizing or concentrating on the CRI efforts.
OCI is not quite yet 1.0.
Yeah, exactly.
That's there, I think.
Exactly. So that would be my canonical answer to this. I mean, we could push more focus on the OCI refactoring right now, but yeah, I think since we are already moving fast forward with the container runtime interface implementation, I think we should kind of make a first checkpoint around this topic and not have too many open. There is a German word for saying this: too many open big working points, right? So that would be my intuitive answer to this.
So I suspect that this will have performance implications for as long as if runs primarily Docker images, having to go through a couple layers of conversion, of course,
right,
takes a performance hit.
Do you have any news or any insights on the OCI support in Kubernetes? Anything from is this somehow present on upstream?
In terms of image running OCI images?
Yeah.
That is something that we punted working on for this version, and I don't believe anyone else picked it up. So it's a thing that needs to be proposed and then implemented, and it is not even in the proposal stage.
I see. Okay.
I think we lost you, Sergius.
Sorry, I was muted.
There we go.
I don't know who stated the question, but I hope it answers it. Okay.
I was just curious.
Yeah. So I hope this answers it a little bit. Then we have another question. What's the danger?
This one's me too.
Okay. I have to be honest, I didn't have a look at it yet because I saw that Alban is having some traffic on this issue. Casey, you commented it once. Maybe you can say something.
Okay, yeah, this is as he explained to me on the subway. So I have to just, big disclaimer. But if I recall correctly, the reason is that in Rocketfly, since we're in the host's mount namespace, even though we're ch-rooted, that doesn't mean anything, right? So if the fear is if you don't remount it MS private before unmounting, there's a distinct possibility that you might accidentally unmount proc.
Okay, that helps a little.
Yeah. No, it's super frustrating, and it's also broke. It means that Rocket GC does not work at all on CentOS.
Yeah, I'm concerned that this is a Stagefly concern that is being applied to every stage one. Like stage one CoreOS also has this remount to it. And if it really is all stage one fly fears, then we should be able to mark in some way stage one fly especially uses shared exclusively.
The thing of it is that I think, I'm not sure if Alban commented on this in this issue, but I thought it was fixed in newer kernels, which is why it's only a bug on CentOS.
The original thing I commented definitely happens on very new kernels.
Okay, so, I see, because it's Rocket. Okay, yeah, sure. So GC doesn't work at all on CentOS because of this bug, regardless of if you're doing anything weird.
Yeah, I think we might be talking about slightly two different bugs at the same time as well, because there's the UDEV one as well as the problem of sharing shared mounts.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole mount propagation story in Rocketfly is somehow sensitive. I think this also relates to this question. We have this other issue where you have two mounts where the mount propagation mode actually does weird stuff on the host. So I think, yeah, the whole mount story around Rocketfly is kind of sensitive. And I think Luca also had a proposition there to make those mount propagation mounts a little bit more tamed in the context of Rocketfly. That was another issue though. So,
and again, what I'm talking about here is only in terms of stage 1 CoreOS.
Right. Oh, okay. Gotcha.
It's just using a series of bind mounts and stage 1 CoreOS, you can end up.
Okay. Okay, understood.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we have anything else? I have nothing more on my list. If there is anything more, I see some participants joined. If somebody wants to chime in regarding questions, Rocket, CRI.
I think Quentin linked an issue, and I don't know if he wanted us to.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly the fly issue. And Quentin also had some fights with this guy.
Yeah. I need to read that again, I think.
Yeah. Okay. So regarding this issue, I will also post another link from the very same one in the chat. Is this response that we came up during a discussion with Luca. To have those special cases to set up certain mount propagation modes, recursive slave in the context when you set up recursive equals true and read only true, and shared and private and slave to tame these kinds of issues. So yeah, and he modified the milestone to 117. So we should have those mount propagation modes in 117, and then we have better sane defaults for those methodological use cases around mount propagation.
There's been discussion about whether setting mount propagation modes should be just allowed on volumes arbitrarily. So
yeah, exactly. This is a proposal that I made.
That's an exact.
Yeah.
Exactly from that. Yeah.
Yeah. This would be a long-term solution.
Doesn't that just make it hard to run into this because you have to actively change your mounts around? And I guess then it's considered that you're shooting yourself in the foot, so it's okay to behave. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Quentin, don't hesitate to open the microphone. So, he's writing. Quentin added a comment on the chat. I added a new comment today, which may think it might not be directly related to my propagation flags. You're right. I also tested things that you posted, Quentin, with the Debian and CentOS images. And as you already found out, I think these were mainly related to the way how those images are being set up in /var/run. But yeah, there's many side effects around this. I mean, the whole mount story is a huge wesp nest of side effects. So we have to be careful and having distinct issues for all the things that we see in this context.
Is that last one just that it needs to be the copy up volume thing?
I unfortunately don't have any context in the copy up stuff.
That's a thing I saw on the appc.
Yeah, right. I just don't know what the motivation is there.
The motivation is our bind mounts always overwrite existing directories inside of an image, and Docker's default behavior when a directory already exists in the image is to allow the files that are already there to be basically copied up to that mount so that they appear kind of merged with the other things.
Oh, I see. Okay. Gotcha.
Which I think might be what that behavior that is in that final comment shows.
Okay. Yeah, makes sense.
Maybe.
Okay, so unless nobody has any further comments or issues or things to clarify, especially since we're sitting together here in the context of container runtime interface. If I can ask you for a favor, Yuan, if you could, and Ifan, if you guys could skim over the GitHub projects overview over the issues, and give us a little guidance, and from your perspective, if there is anything missing, or if you see that we are kind of steering in the wrong direction, just please let us know. And don't hesitate to give us a guidance in terms of prioritized issues, what we can tackle next, right? Because I'm just cherry picking of any open issues right now on CRI that come under my feet, so to say.
Absolutely, will do. And thank you for organizing that and letting us know about how that's organized. That's very awesome. Thank you. And similarly, don't hesitate to ping us or ask us on anything that you're not sure about or want our opinion on.
Okay, cool. So if any of the other guests wants to have the voice, say something or ask the Rocket team, don't hesitate. Otherwise, I wish you a wonderful evening or a good morning in other parts of the world.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Cheers.